What's going on, guys? We're back with the 110cc pit bike. Today we're gonna do the wheels and tires, do the tubes, all that stuff. We'll see if we have time for anything else, but definitely start with the tires and go from there. Let's get to it. Alright, so we're going to start off by loosening these tension bolts. Now we'll loosen the main axle. Get this tire off here. Now we'll push the tire forward to loosen up the chain. And that'll allow us to take it off. Now we can pull the axle out. And you have to make sure to remember where all the shims are. So we had one shim here, right here. This was on the left side. One shim that came over on the right side. And we can just put those back on our axle shaft so that we remember the order which they came off. And just put everything on there back the way we found it, so that we don't forget. We do have bearings in here, one on each side. You kind of have to be careful of those, of course, so that you don't lose them. They're very important to this whole thing, so you got to make sure not to lose those. You can pop them out if they come out easy enough, and that way while you're working on the tire you don't have to worry about them getting lost or getting caked in dirt or anything. If they don't come out super easily, you don't have to take them out. I wouldn't pry on them. All right, there we have the rear tire. All right, for the front tire, we have a really similar situation to the back. We're just gonna loosen up the bolt, take out the axle, making sure to remember where all the spacers were placed. We're gonna put the axle back together in the same order that it was so that we don't lose any of the pieces, and remove the axle and pop the tire off. right, so I'm gonna use a rubber mallet for this. You would not want to use a regular hammer. You don't want to damage the end of these threads. You could use a wooden block or something soft. It doesn't take much, just a little bit of a tap. And then once you get it started, you can grab it from the other side and pull it out. All right, there we go. We have the axle. This one was on the left side. This spacer was on the right side. Put the nut back on there. We have our wheel. We're ready to move on to removing the tires, putting the new tubes and tires back on. So this is my tire changing setup. There are lots of different ways to change a tire. If you don't want to get this fancy, you can do it with a couple screwdrivers. There are lots of ways and lots of resources online for changing tires. This is a setup that I got from Harbor Freight. The top section is for changing motorcycle tires and tires of that nature. The bottom section is for changing car tires. You buy the two pieces separately, put them together. I think maybe I have $150 in this whole unit. Like I said, if you don't want to do it this way, there are lots of different ways to change a tire. This is just the way that I do it. I change 1 or 2 motorcycle tires every season, you know, on different motorcycles that I have. Sometimes more, sometimes less, but for me, this is a good situation. And this is how we're going to change the tires today.
Have you seen the eyes of Pan? Have you heard the cry of pain? Have you felt the aching hunger and tears falling like rain? Can we find a hope for tomorrow? Can we find a helping hand that can ease the pain and sorrow for everyone, every man?
There we go. There's the front tire. All right, so here is the front tire. And we have the tube, but we're gonna deal with the tube in a little bit here. We're gonna put the front tire on initially, and then we're gonna work the tube around on the inside. Now there are a lot of different ways to do this. A lot of people are gonna do it a lot of different ways. This is just the way that I do it, and it works for me. If it doesn't work for you, or if you want to find another different way to do this, there are lots and lots of resources online. This is just how I do it. So I'm going to start off by getting this real nice and wet. I'm going to put one side on and just start working it on. Then I'm going to use this. Now this, not everybody has one of these, but this is something that I found works for me again. You can find these online. I built this one. I bought this head and just put it on this handle. Next part is putting the tube in. And we've got to be real careful when we put this tube in because we don't want it to pinch. If it pinches or if we catch it with one of our pry bars, we're going to be in real trouble. We'll have to change the tube again. Now a lot of these have a little nut that goes on your little valve stem here. And they're really nice because once you get it in there and get it seated, you can twist this nut back in and it'll hold it in place, and that's really important. Again, we want to be really careful when we're putting this tube in because we don't want to puncture this tube. And try also not to twist the tube inside there. You don't want it twisted because when you put air into it, you don't want it twisted around in there in such a way that when you fill it, it's going to constrict itself. Before you start sticking anything in there, you want to try to make sure that the tube is sunken down into the rim as much as you can. This is the part where you have to be really careful not to pinch anything. All right, we're just gonna get it wet again. Different people use different things. You can use Vaseline. They actually make a tire lube that you can put on here, and if I had some, I would use it. It works fantastic. I just don't have any. I'm using a little bit of Windex. There are different solutions that you can do. Some people mix up a little bit of just dish soap and water. Now do this at your own risk. Be very careful when doing this.
Have you seen the eyes of Japan? Have you heard the cry of pain? Have you felt the aching hunger and tears falling like the rain? Can we find hope for tomorrow? Can we find a hell?
So there we go. There's the front tire. Pretty much done. All right, so with the rear, we're gonna do pretty much just the same thing we did with the front. That was pretty easy. Okay, here's the thing. They do make some better tools for this. Some plastic safety guards, things of that nature. If you're really worried about marring up or scratching up your rims, be very careful. Don't necessarily do it the way I am doing it right now. I'm just down and dirty getting it done. I'm not super concerned about scratching these rims. All right, again, we're gonna work the tube in here. Being careful not to twist it so that it doesn't twist on itself while we're putting air in it. And try to get it far enough out of the way so that when we're putting those bars in there to put the tire back on, it doesn't get pinched. There we go. There's the rear tire. All right, now we're gonna fill them with air. It's important, it says on the tire, don't fill it past 35 to seal the bead. That's pretty important actually. You don't wanna have a big bulge in one area or another. That's about it. Looks pretty good. The bead's looking pretty good. I don't hear any air hissing out, which is pretty important. All right, same thing with the rear tire. We don't want to go any further than 35 pounds per square inch. Went a little too far, but our bead is seated. We don't need anywhere near that much pressure. I'm just going to relieve some of the pressure here. We're at about 25 psi right now. The bead seems to be seated. I don't hear any air leaking, so we're going to leave it there for now. All right, time to put the rear wheel back on. We're gonna start off with the chain. Just kind of get it around the sprocket and the axle. We want to remember to put all the spacers in the same way we found them, the same way they came out. If you don't put the spacers on the right side, it won't be lined up correctly for the chain. All right, we're just gonna snug up the axle. Not tight at all because we need to adjust the chain. We just wanna get it so that it's kind of snug there. We're going to want to tighten up our tension screws here, and we want to get them so that they're exactly aligned. We want this side and this side to be lined up exactly the same, and we can do that a couple of different ways. The main goal is to get it so that your chain is straight, so that this front sprocket lines up with the rear sprocket. Now, some are really nice because they have little marks here, and these do have marks, but I'm not sure with our chain length if we're going to get enough out of these to actually line up with the marks on either side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure this. So here to the center of our axle right now, we have about 1 5/8 on this side. To the center of our axle here, we're at about 1.5 inches. You know what? That's pretty close. That's about 1 5/8 right there. And we want to get it so that our chain is moderately tight. So I'm going to go, right now I have both sides about even. So I'm going to turn them half a turn each. 1/2 a turn at a time. So I'm going to turn this one 1/2 a turn. And this one 1/2 a turn. Until I get it to where I want it to be for the chain tightness. And that's pretty good right there. We don't have a lot of deflection, but we have a little bit. It's relatively tight. We don't want it to be way too tight. We can work on the final adjustment later, but that's pretty good. I'm just going to do a measurement real quick again to the center of my axle. That's looking pretty darn good. From the back of this tab here to the center of the axle, you just want to get it so that it's even. You can kind of eyeball the tire. They have little tools that you can use for this to get it just perfect. And then once we get the chain to the correct tension, we're going to tighten down our axle. And that's the rear. All right, now with the front, same as with the back, we want to make sure that we put our axle in the same way that we had it before. We want to make sure that our spacers are the same orientation as they were before, so that we have the proper spacing, so that you have the proper alignment. You want to put your disc on the same side that your brake is going to be on. That's how you know whether or not it's frontwards or backwards. You want it the same way that it came off. And again, the disc goes on the same side your brake goes on. And then we're just going to tighten this on. Nice and snug. Don't over tighten it. Certainly don't want your wheel to fall off. That's That's never good. There we go, there's your front wheel. Thanks so much for watching, guys. We got a couple of new tires here. We got the rear tire, we got the front tire on. It's a huge step on the way. Sometimes when we're doing these projects, it feels like they take forever, like they're never gonna get done. But if you just keep plodding along, if you just keep putting one foot in front of the other, eventually they will get done. You don't have to, like I've said in the past, you don't have to even have all the parts when you start. Just start it and keep going. That's the key, just keep going. One other thing, as you're watching me do this project and other projects that I work on, I may not always do it the best way. There are probably lots of other ways that people do this. So when you're doing it yourself, take that into consideration. Do your research, watch other YouTube videos, use your head. Just think about it as you're doing it. Take your time, make sure to stay safe. You don't want to chop any fingers off or lose an eye. Use proper safety gear, all that kind of dad stuff that I feel like I need to say. Anyway, we do these things because we love them. You know, learn along the way, take your time, and just have a good time. That's why we're here. All right, folks, thanks for watching. Peace out.